about all of the churches here in our city that we are joining together for unity. This is through an organization called Christ Together that we have the opportunity to help lead. And right now, my microphone's super loud, sorry about that. But right now, we are actually teaching the same series for the first 4 weeks of this year, and that has never happened in the city before. So Greenwood Christian, Emmanuel, and us are all teaching this series right now. They're talking about it in their churches, and the reason is because Jesus had a prayer in John 17 that all Christians would be united around him and his love, and then we're actually seeing it happen in 2022. Is that not awesome? Yeah, so I think we should give it up for Jesus because what he's doing in this city is pretty unbelievable. And so what will happen after that is they will take this into our groups and take this just a little bit deeper in our lives. And so for us, we're actually turning this into a year-long series that will probably go past that. Here's why. We have found the one missing thing in most churches that I have grown up in my life, I've been in leadership at, or I've been a part of, including our own, is this missing piece of something called spiritual formation. This is something that Dallas Willard became an expert in. He saw all throughout Christianity is that we knew a lot about Jesus. We had all the head knowledge. We had degrees based around him. But yet this spiritual formation of actually becoming like him was one of the biggest missing proponents of the church. And so we want to keep this definition in front of you often. This is what we mean when we talk about spiritual formation. We are talking about framing a progression of life in which people come to actually do all the things that Jesus taught. So we're obviously going for the heart. We are aiming to change of the inner person where what we do originates. This is what we mean when we talk about spiritual formation. So we're going to have this up another time in the service. We're going to pull this down. But today, here's what our subtitle is. It's Hate My Mom? Question mark? Any thoughts? I mean, I love my mom dearly. She's a dear, sweet woman to me. A lot of you call her mom too. And when it sounds like Jesus is saying to me in Luke 14, verse 26, is that I'm supposed to hate her. So let me read this to you. If anyone comes to me and does not hate his own father and mother, wife and children, brothers and sisters, yes, and even his own life, he cannot be my disciple. This seems very odd and contradictory for what Jesus actually stands for the rest of his ministry. When we hear him say things like, love God with all of your heart, soul, and mind, love your neighbor as yourself, but hate your mom and dad, it doesn't seem to line up, does it? So I want to pull you back into this whole idea of spiritual formation. I want you to understand what he's trying to form in us, and this is what we're going to be building out for today. So let me ask you this. Why is change so hard? Okay, we're in the perfect time of year for you to be thinking about changes in your life, right? It's that resolution time. It's that time of year where we do something for 18 minutes and then fail and then try it again next year, right? Because this is that time where we're willing to look at change, whether we think we need to or not, but that's what everybody does around this time. But let me ask you a few questions. Like, why is it so hard to change? I mean lasting change, not like temporary things. The kind that actually changes who you are as a person. Why is that so hard? Why is it so hard to lose weight, to quit smoking, to quit drinking, to stop looking at porn, to stop getting angry, to stop stressing and worrying, to stop lying, to stop having FOMO, to stop treating people the way that you do? There are actually some fairly simple answers to these questions. The experts say that we are pretty much fully formed in habits and personality by the time we are 8 years old. Process that, parents. Don't screw it up in the first 8 years of their life. No pressure, right? So a lot of it has to do with the way that you were brought up, what you were exposed to, and what you observed as normal in those developmental years. So I want you to think back to that time that you were shaped and formed, and I've tried to do this in my own life and think about what it was like for those first 8-10 years of my life, and man, this seems pretty spot on. Of the way that I am now as an adult, the things I've had to change as an adult because of some of that shaping and forming. But there's also events that have shaped your life positively or negatively. See, there's so much of our society that's being shaped by trauma from a young age that it is shaping us into unhealthy adults who are afraid to trust people or believe change can actually happen to us. Unfortunately, the data that has come out in recent years about childhood trauma is shocking and the statistics are horrible. Over 500,000 kids are abused in the U.S. every year. 1 in 4 girls will be sexually abused and 1 in 6 boys will be. 93% of the abuse victims actually know their abuser, so this is somebody that they trust. Almost 70% of abuse happens to children 17 and under, with the majority of it being 10 and under. When you hear statistics like this and then match them with our developmental childhood years that are going to determine who we are as adults happen inside of that window, it gives a little bit more light on why things seem to be the way that they are. These things cause such embarrassment and shame that we typically don't tell anyone, and we just live with the hurt and the trauma. They shape us differently than we would have been, and so it's difficult to change into something else, especially because we don't ever want to let our guard down. Something else that's on the rise, especially here in Indiana, is domestic violence. Before quarantine happened in our state, they were getting about 1,000 calls a day to the domestic hotline and suicide prevention, domestic abuse hotline and suicide prevention line. That went up 25 times to 25,000 calls a day during quarantine. Why would that be? We use so much distraction to cover up how we are really feeling and not addressing the brokenness that we can hide in a normal work week. But when we're stuck in a house or apartment together and we have nothing to distract us from what is going on inside of us, it all comes out, and it came out for most in a very unhealthy way. Other forms of abuse you may be experiencing, I want to talk through these as well, are physical. This could be physical intimidation, hitting, punching, slapping, sexual abuse. It's any form of inappropriate touching of a sexual nature. It's if you have a boyfriend or a girlfriend that tries to convince you that if you love them, you'll do this thing with them. It's verbally abusive, parents that yell and call you names all the time, husbands that yell, control, and threaten, a wife that would degrade, manipulate, and control. And then there's grooming that has made its way onto the scene pretty intentionally. This is a tactic of sex predators and traffickers. They shower you with compliments and they buy you things and then tell you it's your turn to do something for them. I want you to hear this list of things that is happening all around us, because I think a lot of times it's so much easier for us to just bury our head in the sand, be frustrated with people, wonder why they won't change, yet we don't look past their hurt, their brokenness, their walls to see what is actually happening. But this is the heart of Jesus, church. And so when we ask these things, we ask these questions, why is it so hard to change? When we shed light on the situation, it actually becomes very easy to understand why it's so difficult to trust people, why it's so hard to actually change. I want to tell you, if these things have happened to you, I'm so, so sorry. It's not what is supposed to have happened to you. Jesus has not intended for that to happen to you. He wants to heal you. He wants to offer you new life, and he wants to set you free from those things. And with a church full of people who trauma seems to be marking who they are as people, I just want to say, I'm sorry. I'm sorry if that is something that you've experienced. I also want you to know we want to help you. We can connect you with people who can walk through this trauma with you. The hard part about being a victim, however, of abuse is that oftentimes you feel like you deserve that abuse. I need you to hear me. No one deserves to be abused. No one deserves to have a life like that. Please have confidence to trust us and let us know if you fall in one of these horrible situations. Look, if you're somebody who has experienced this, I don't care what you've done. You don't deserve this. And I need you to hear me. Because a lot of times you are protecting the very thing that is abusing you, the very person that is abusing you, and you have done nothing to deserve what you're getting. I want you to know that not only is that our heart here at City Life to help you walk through that, but this is more importantly the heart of Jesus. Unfortunately, I don't know how or why, but he gets this bad rap as not ever wanting to help people in that situation. So we look at other ways to change. So we're asking the question, why is change so hard? We have good theories and strategies of change, but they just don't seem to ever move us forward. So let's look at one of the popular ones, the most popular ones that there are out there. One of the best known approaches to change is the stages of change or trans-theoretical method, introduced in the late 1970s by researchers James Prochaska and Carlo Di Clemente. I want you to look at this slide, and I want you to understand this is how change typically happens with us. I think this is a really good definition of what it looks like for most of us. There's a pre-contemplation stage. This is probably when you're not even aware you need to change, but something gets your attention. You analyze your actions and assess the risks of your current behavior during that pre-contemplation phase. Then you move to the contemplation phase. This starts with conflicted emotions, right? You know there might need to be a change, but then you've done this for so long, and then you start weighing out the pros and the cons. You're like, okay, if I did this, I would be healthier, I would be this, whatever. But the cons are, I have to become something different than I've been my whole entire life. And then you're ready to identify the barriers that would stop you from this. Then there's the preparation phase. You try small changes, you set a goal, and you get a plan of action ready to go. And then there's the action. Now, if any of you are like me, how many of you jump straight to this phase first when you're going to change something? Yeah. How many of you have successfully changed things having that plan of action? Some of you have, right? Maybe for a short time, maybe it's been for a long period of time, I don't know. But that's not typically the way that we should jump to things. We haven't contemplated, pre-contemplated, we won't have any plan in place where it's like, I'm going to change. Now, if you're a really talented person, great job. That is not how most of society goes, though. So then, if we do have an action plan, this is where we do direct action, we reward success, and we find accountability. For an example, there's a guy at the gym who comes in and he was very, very overweight, young guy, could barely walk up the stairs inside of the gym, and he's lost over 100 pounds. I tell that dude every time I see him, you are incredible, keep going. He smiles, he loves it, and he goes and he works out harder. Because this is what happens inside this action plan, right? You find some accountability, it's thriving on that, and you're excited to do it, and then there comes the maintenance phase. Now, I personally hate maintenance. Anybody else? I want to get in my car, turn it on, drive to where I'm going, and not maintain a dang thing on it. I hate maintenance. Anybody else? Yeah? So this is a difficult phase for a lot of people. I just want things to work right. I don't want to work on them. And maintenance is something that I often skip over in my own life. But here's the maintenance phase. This is where you avoid temptation, but this is also where you develop coping strategies for that temptation. And then here's everyone's favorite phase, relapse. This is where frustration, feelings of failure, and disappointment set in. But there is good in this phase too. You can identify triggers here, recognize the barriers, and re-engage with your commitment to change. This actually isn't a bad strategy, but although it's helped a lot of people, the problem is, what are you trying to change to? I am confident that if this method is not tied to Jesus, you will fail. Now, let me explain. Let's go with weight loss. Let's say you decided that you need to lose weight because somebody inspired you by their journey. That's great, but why are you doing it? Let's say somebody said something to you about your weight, so now you're a little bit embarrassed, so you're finally going to go get fit and get in shape. But why? Why are you doing it? And then let's say that you went to your doctor and they say, hey, if you don't change something, you're going to have major health complications and die young. So you decide to change. But why are you doing it? See, we go to that method of change with one of these three scenarios typically, and the three scenarios are inspiration, reputation, and preservation. So the first one, I just got inspired to change. I see this guy who comes in the gym every day. Man, he looks good. That's inspiring to me. I'm going to do what he's doing. But why? But then the next one is reputation. Man, somebody actually said something about me, and I'm a little bit self-conscious. I don't want people to think like that about me. I need to change my reputation. The last one, which does tend to stick a little bit longer, is preservation. You go into the doctor and they say, hey, if you don't do this, this is what's going to happen to you. And you're like, oh, okay, I need to make a change. But what happens is none of these typically bring about lasting change. So why is it that the first verse we read today is so rough? Do you guys see where I'm going with this? Do you see what Jesus is trying to put in front of us? Because if you take that verse for face value, you will dismiss what Jesus is trying to say. Look at it one more time. If anyone comes to me and does not hate his own father and mother, wife and children, brothers and sisters, yes, and even his own life, cannot be my disciple. Now, let's reword that just a little bit into how the proper interpretation of the original language would have been. If anyone comes to me and does not have a love for me that is greater than his own father and mother, wife and children, brothers and sisters, yes, even greater than his own life, or her own life, they cannot be my disciple. Changes things a bit. And this is what Jesus was actually saying. But if you take this for face value, Jesus sounds like a jerk and sounds like, why would I ever want to follow this guy? And then we're stuck back at square one where we're going, but what is going to help me actually change? Well, let's read the whole thing in its context. Let's look at Luke 14. We're going to start in verse 25. Now, starting in verse 25, it says, now great crowds were traveling with him, so he turned and said to them, I just want to tell you Jesus' strategy really quick. If I was walking on a hillside and great crowds of people were following me, the next verse would have not come out of my mouth. I would have said, okay, guys, we need to create a really good worship set. Let's get everybody seated comfortably on the hillside. I'll preach here in just a minute, and this is a really good way to grow our church. Right? That's the strategy when you have a large group of people following you. That's not Jesus' strategy. Here's what he said. If anyone, all of you in this crowd that are following me, if you want to come after me and don't hate your own father and mother, wife and children, brothers and sisters, yes, and even your own life, you cannot be my disciple. That is not a strategy for growth because Jesus didn't care about that. He goes on and says, whoever does not bear his own cross and come after me cannot be my disciple. That sounds odd to us in 2022. In that day, Jesus probably would have been in proximity where he could have pointed at the Roman executioners who had people hanging on crosses and said, if none of you can carry your own cross, you can't follow after me as my disciple. See, what Jesus is doing is he's trying to pull in the reality of what it is actually going to be like to follow him. So now we don't deal with any of these things here in the place that we live, in the context that we live. So what does this look like for us? Well, the whole reason that we titled this Spectator is because a lot of people want to stay on the sidelines and they want to spectate at what Jesus is doing. They want to believe in him, but following him is something completely different. And this is where the spiritual formation piece is the missing link to what we have been doing, I think, all along. Jesus goes on and he gives a few scenarios. He says, for which of you, wanting to build a tower, does it first sit down and calculate the cost to see if he has enough to complete it? Otherwise, after he has laid the foundation and cannot finish it, all the onlookers will begin to ridicule him, saying, this man started to build and wasn't able to finish. What is Jesus talking about? Okay, let me give you a scenario that happens at church camps, at churches, and a lot of other places like that. Well-intentioned, hear me out. Hey, there is a time you will die. Jesus, you have the opportunity to live with him in all of eternity in a place called heaven. There's no sickness, there's no death. It's amazing, and you're in the presence of Jesus. The alternative is a place called hell. It is a place of torment. It is a place of shame. It is a place you do not want to go and you can never get out. Both of those statements are true. But then what comes after this is typically why we create a belief culture, not a follow culture. If you don't want to spend your eternity here, then you need to surrender your life to Jesus. I mean, I don't know anyone that if I asked that question to would be like, I'm good, man. I actually do want to spend my time here for all of eternity. We would say, yeah, of course I want to be here. What do I need to do? And well-intentioned people and well-intentioned pastors and well-intentioned whoever else is giving that would say, this is what you need to do. And I think their heart would be for that person to truly follow Christ, to truly spend eternity in heaven with him. But there's something missing in there, and it is now, listen, here's what I need you to know about this. The salvation part of you believing in Jesus, that's the easy part. The next 50 years is the hard part because you're following Jesus in how he said to follow, which means you are giving up the right to your life. It's called counting the cost. And when Jesus lays out a scenario and says, hey, how many of you would go build your own house and not first sit down and actually see what it's going to cost you? You're going to go out and you're going to pick the piece of land, you're going to dig the foundation, you're going to get one wall up, and you're going to go, oh, shoot, we ran out of money. And people are going to come by and they're going to go, hey, man, what's going on with your house? Why do you only have one wall up? Well, we didn't actually sit down and do a budget. We didn't consider it, and now we just have one wall up. We're going to have to save money until we can build the rest. That was pretty dumb. Move on, buddy. That's what we would say, right? Why is this so important of how Jesus is connecting these two things? Let me just ask you if you would have known anybody like this. How many of you have known somebody who's come in to some situation to do with Jesus? They're really excited. They tell everybody about it. It's Facebook, everything and everywhere. And then all of a sudden, probably a few short months, a few years later, that person has nothing to do with Jesus, doesn't talk about Jesus. You ask about Jesus, and it's like, well, this is what Jesus is talking about. Because Jesus isn't some emotional thing that we do that makes us feel better to help us change. He's not one of those strategies that we put in place to go, okay, I've tried everything else. I'm going to use Jesus to change. I'm going to start in my phases with him. Jesus is very crystal clear what it is going to cost to follow him. He gives one more scenario. He goes, or what king going to war against another king will not first sit down and decide if he is able with 10,000 to oppose the one who comes against him with 20,000. If not, while the other is still very far off, he sends a delegation and asks for terms of peace. In the same way, therefore, everyone who does not renounce all his possessions cannot be my disciple. I know that these things sound harsh from Jesus. He's being very, very direct. Now, Jesus, what he's doing is showing you what it will cost to truly follow him, including loving him more than even your own family and your own life. But I want to quote a great philosopher of our day. Very simply put, this is how a lot of us live our life. If you ain't first, you're last, right? Although, the funniest part in the movie is when he tells his dad this is how he's lived his whole life, and his dad's like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. There's second, there's third, there's even fourth and fifth. What does that even mean? I think if Jesus had a meme, and if we would have had more time, we would have done this, but I think this is what Jesus would say. I think he would say, if I'm not first, I'm last. But this is how a lot of us might think, right? Because honestly, there's really nothing wrong with having the idea of the great philosopher Ricky Bobby, if you're not first, you're last. All right, enough of that. Okay. But I want you to think about those words that Jesus is saying here in Luke. If I'm not first, I'm last. Think about that in your life. Think about the times when Jesus is first. Something has competed with him before that time. You've decided to move him to the number one spot. But then think about how, like, when life changes and shifts and he moves somewhere else, he typically doesn't move to second, third, fourth, whatever. He typically moves way down the list from first to last. So this is called counting the costs. Jesus is very crystal clear about what this means to follow him. See, Jesus is saying, I want to be your one and only, not the one of many. I want a mutually exclusive relationship with you. Are you willing to count that cost? The day that I asked Amanda to marry me, I said, I'm committed to you for the rest of my life. I only want to love you. My heart is all yours. I want to be exclusive with you and marry you. Her response was, I love you. I'm committed to you. I want to spend the rest of my life with you. But one condition is I want to be able to see other people. That is hypothetical. But I would have went on and said, is there someone else now? No, but I just want to keep my options open. You're good and all, but like maybe someone else will come along better. After I would have throat punched her, I would have got up and left. I'm kidding. It's a joke. My wife and I are celebrating 25 years of marriage next month, by the way. That did not happen. She would have punched me anyways. But anyways, this is what the Spectator says. Jesus is saying, I want to be number one with no second place in your life. How do we do that? Why would we even consider that? How is that possible to live in this world with Jesus as my only thing? Not even a close second. Well, it's with you being very honest of where he ranks in your life right now. The reason why it's so hard for us to change, I am confident that either we don't believe Jesus, that all of our sin is forgiven, we're truly set free, or we just don't actually know that. See, I'm convinced the reason why people don't come to Jesus and they want to build theories about if God exists and is he really real, who created the universe, what actually happened with humankind, did we evolve, were we created? I think all of those arguments are just because people don't know, they won't sit and they won't understand the actual love and grace and mercy of Jesus that says, look at me. I know everything you've ever done and I'll forgive you anyways. Because no one's ever done that to me outside of Jesus. Even my wife, who I love dearly, I guarantee remembers things I did our first week of marriage as much as she would want to forget them. But Jesus does not. And so in our human mind, we look at Jesus and we go, how could you honestly forgive me? Man, there's no way. You know the things nobody else on this earth knows. How could you set me free from that? How could you still want me? This is the big disconnect and divide for us. But for those of you that have experienced truly the love of Christ, you're like, I get it. It's unbelievable. Church, I can tell you, I get it. 25 years old, in my apartment, by myself, I fell to my knees. I gave everything to him. I get it. He made me come alive that day. He put the Holy Spirit inside of me. He rescued me. He set me free, and I have never been the same since. He washed me clean. He gave me a new life. I am his son, and I can tell you, I believe it fully. For those of you that believe it, you understand what I mean. So let me talk to you for just a second. I have replaced Jesus as number one several times in my life. I don't know why. There's nothing else that even compares. You have too, more than likely. Why? But there was a point in my life when I said, okay, enough is enough. I'm all in. I don't care what it costs me. I am going to follow you wholeheartedly, completely, whatever it is that you ask me for the rest of my days. My wife is yours. My kids are yours. My career is yours. Any money I make, it's yours. All of it. What do you want to do with me? I assure you, the things that left me were all those things that I worried about controlling before that day. All of the things that left me were the anxieties that used to creep up because Jesus was not my exclusive. Church, what I want you to know, if you are somebody sitting in this room who has not yet experienced the love of Christ, I'm a really good arguer, but I have no desire to argue with you if Jesus is real. You can ask anybody who was involved in my life before him, and then ask the ones afterwards, and I do not have to argue with you at all. I'll be glad to have a conversation with you. My argument is not going to win you to Jesus anyways. But what's going to happen is if you can see the love that he has for you, it will compel you towards him. So why would we then consider making him our one and only exclusive? Well, because that's what he did with us. Our response should be gratitude for that. Think about this. Jesus is sitting in heaven viewing humanity. He sees the sin and the brokenness and the hurt and the shame and all of the things happening. And God says, I want you to go down and I want you to pay the penalty of all of that sin. I know you did none of it, but there has to be a perfect sacrifice. There's no contemplation. There's no, wait, you realize what this is going to cost. Okay. Jesus comes to earth. He's born in a perfect way. He is awaiting his time of ministry as an adult. He's doing a few things on the scene. He comes on the scene at 30. People realize something is different. They realize the authority and the power of God that is on him as he claims to be God here in the flesh. That very claim is what got him murdered. He is falsely accused. He's ran before all of these trials when he's arrested falsely for claiming that he is God here in the flesh to set all of humanity free. As they condemn him and they sentence him to die the lowest, most horrific death possible, they beat him almost to death first. He then has to carry his cross all the way to where he would eventually die. He goes and he gets nailed to this wooden beam. He gets hung up for everybody to see about this same level of this stage where people could walk past him and they could spit on him, hurl insults at him and say, I thought you were God. Call yourself down off of this cross. And the whole time, Jesus is saying, God, forgive these people. I don't even know what they're doing. They don't even know who they're talking to. They don't understand what I'm doing here. I'm offering them salvation. Forgive them. And as Jesus takes his last breath and the world goes dark and the rocks break in half and people realize he is who he says he is then buried in a tomb. This becomes an amazing event in history and people talk about it, but then something happens 3 days later. As they're going to pay the respects at the tomb and they take burial spices, that gigantic stone is rolled away and he's no longer there. And one of the ladies who found him turns around and he's standing there. This angel goes, he told you that he was going to do this. How come you didn't believe him? He's over there. And she runs in. He's like, hey, yes, I'm the master, but go tell everybody else. I want them to see me and I want to give them their final commission. And he says, now that you know I'm real, and now that I've been seen by over 500 eyewitnesses, history and science record that this actually happened along with the Bible. This is why I don't want to argue with you. Jesus says, now that I've proved who I am, I have done this so you can be set free. I've done this so actual change can happen in your life. That you can realize I had your sin on me when I was on that cross. That I forgive your sin if you ask me. Now go tell everybody that story. So as this story spreads, it makes its way to Greenwood, Indiana, a few thousand years later, and I come to the realization that Jesus is going to be my one and only. As I surrender my life to him, he takes all of those dirty, broken, horrific things I've ever done, and he forgave every single one of them. He made me brand new. He wiped the slate clean, and he said, now go tell everybody that story. Church, the reason why Jesus is my one and only, my exclusive, is out of the gratitude for what he did to make that possible for me. It's not him controlling my life. It's not because I have to. It's because there's no way in the world he should have ever forgiven me. It's because there's no way in the world I deserved what I got from him. And it compels me to make him my one and only. I struggled with how to end this service because there's so much to work through in our lives. But I'm just going to ask you to sit for just a minute or two and just in contemplation while I ask you a few questions. You can close your eyes, you can bow, you can put your head down, you can look at me, I don't care. I just want to ask you, if you're a follower of Jesus in this room, is Jesus your one and only? Like, don't give me a canned answer. Don't just respond quickly. Don't even answer me at all. This is for you. Is Jesus your one and only? If not, what or who is? You have time here. I want you to really think about this. If not, what or who is? Second question. What will you need to change to make him your one and only? This is probably the hardest question you're going to be asked today. I'll tell you what it was for me. I put my career choices in his hands. I put my living arrangements in his hands. And the hardest thing that I had to do was turn my wife and my boys over to him and say, however long I have with them, thank you, but they are yours, not mine. That's hard, and it took a while. So these first two questions are diagnostic, and they're meant to get you to think and understand where you are in your relationship. Now comes a practical one. What is one thing you can do right now today to make him the exclusive love and relationship of your life? So I'm pretty confident you could figure this out pretty easily if you're married. Let's not make this really difficult in our relationship with Jesus. One of the suggestions I actually got from Pastor Doug is he's like, what about gratitude? Could you wake up tomorrow with a heart and an attitude of gratitude where you're understanding what Jesus is asking you to do? And you're responding out of this gratitude and his grace because of what he's done for you. Let that be the basis of how you move forward from here. God, as we're sitting and we're contemplating, what I pray as we sing this last song would happen is that an overwhelming grace and mercy would come rushing over every single one of us who are followers of you in this room. Lord, I cannot even count the amount of times that I fail you in a week. Yet, as I come to you and ask for your forgiveness, you forgive me every time. As I try to walk away from the things that grip my heart, that make me sin, that I choose to sin, I should say, I come to you over and over, and you're the God of a trillion chances and forgivenesses. I just want every follower in this room or watching online to feel that. And then allow gratitude to well up inside of them and go, gosh, how can I put anything else above that in my life? For those of you that are not followers of Jesus in this room, what I hope you have heard is that, okay, let me get this straight. Jesus will forgive everything I've ever done. He won't hold any of it against me. He won't bring it back up later in a conversation. That is correct. And when I mess up, he'll forgive me then too? Yes. Okay, what's the price? The price is true and ultimate surrender. Jesus laid his life down to make this salvation possible. He bids you to come and lay yours down too. So the way that we end our service is we have some couches over to your left. We have people that are going to be standing in the back. These people are ready to pray with you. They're ready to talk with you. They're ready to answer your questions. For those of you that do not have a relationship with Jesus, they would love to have this conversation with you. For those of you that are followers of Jesus and you're like, okay, he's not my one and only, they would love to have this conversation with you too. You can't do this alone. We want to walk with you, next to you. We need your help as much as you need ours. So when Jesus seemingly asked the question, or we asked the question, hate my mom? Well, as you can see, Jesus is trying to get us to see him as our one and only and our exclusive. Now, he wants you to love your mom. He just wants the love that you have for him to be compared as not much for all of the other things here. Lord, we love you. We pray that we would leave here with you as our one and only. In Jesus' name.